Okay, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Stephen Stern.
Thank you, Mel, for a very kind and warm introduction. It's the first time in a while I've had the opportunity to sit in front of people and, I guess, talk about life and things. And as Mel said, a class of engineers who are studying engineering, I take it, and going off into this wonderful wide world, which it is a wonderful wide world. Frightening, but certainly wonderful. So as Mel said, Stephen Stern, just a little bit about me, which I think is always nice to just say a few words about who I am, where I'm from. So I was born in 1969 in Johannesburg, South Africa. In 73 we came to Israel. Hopefully my English is okay and it's not too fast and everybody's good. So, we came to Israel, and then I was the baby of 4 boys. I had 3 older brothers, and we came here 73, about 76, just after the Yom Kippur War. We moved to America, to a place called Oshkosh, Wisconsin, which is in the middle of nowhere. And we're there about 8 years. Then we moved to a place called Great Neck, New York, which is in Long Island in New York. And from there I went to SUNY Albany in upstate.
Hold on a second, Stephen.
Oh.
I don't see anything.
What do you mean don't see anything? It's live. 6 people are watching it.
There's something wrong in my side.
Can somebody please verify that there's sound?
I don't even see the video.
Can anybody see it, please? Like it, share it. We're taking a minute here.
Sorry?
People that are watching, can you hear us? Oved. Okay, Stephen. So share, love, like. Go ahead, Stephen.
Feel the love.
Yeah.
So Oshkosh, Wisconsin, Great Neck, New York. I went to SUNY Albany. 4 years, I was a psychology major. I didn't quite know what I wanted to do with that. So I went off to work for my local fraternity and traveled around the United States, about 120 universities in 2 years, speaking about developing fraternities. And then I went to do my MBA, New Orleans. I really liked it there, so I went to Tulane. Ended up bringing my childhood friend, Dana, who I met in kindergarten in Gan Chova here in Israel in 1973. So we got married in New Orleans 21 years ago. I have 2 daughters, 17, almost 18, and 16, 3 weeks from now, Mika and Zoe. And we came to Israel 11 years ago, making Aliyah. I promised my wife we'd come and live here, so we did. And that's kind of a short history of my background. I personally, from a work experience, have done all sorts of things. And please feel free to ask questions, interrupt as we move forward, because there's so much to talk about, and I'd like to be focused and make sure you get to hear what you'd like to hear too. The most recent job was actually in sales and marketing. I started in software development, taught myself BASIC, and eventually went off and ended up doing program management, not coding, but I did JCL and COBOL. Some of you know what COBOL is, maybe. I don't know. JCL, job control language. I don't know if you even know that. IBM mainframes, RS-6000 clusters, punch cards. Really, really old stuff. Anyway, from that I went into software platforms, companies like you might have heard of Amdocs, NICE, AMS, CGI systems, all that type of stuff. Consulting, system testing, all that stuff, the whole life cycle development. SDLC, as we called it then. I guess today they have all sorts of other terms for software development. But on your side, I understand you're all industrial engineers mostly? So that's where I ended up. I ended up in sales eventually of platforms and was at an amazing job finally. I skipped around from jobs. I had a studio, which Mel had alluded to, which was a dream startup. And unfortunately, it crashed and burned like most startups, which is to be expected, but I didn't quite expect it at the time. and then went off to do sales in a company called Spot Option. It's Israel is known for a lot of its software development, especially in the binary options and online world of casinos, things like that. So I worked there, and I finally found this ideal job. I'm walking distance from my house here in Ramat Gan in the big Moshe Aviv Tower. I'm a swimmer, so I was swimming 3, 4, 5, 6 days a week, 3 kilometers a day, which was wonderful, traveling once a month to like Japan or Hong Kong or the US or the UK, sales, really embracing this new job. And then in October we were in Berlin, which is an amazing opportunity to go there for a convention. And I went on a tour and we came back, and this is October 2014. And I remember because this is the time of year where everybody in Israel is sick or getting sick, or it's cold and it's hot, and so you're coughing a little and this and that. And so I was coughing, and I went off to the doctor, and she's like, okay, go and do a x-ray, because you may have bronchitis and we need to check that. You've had it before. So I went to do an x-ray. Anyway, so that kind of leads us to where we are today, and why I'm here to tell you a little bit about what I am dealing with, and even with that things are okay, and we can make decisions and move forward and figure out what we want to do and go and live our lives, because they are wonderful. So the doctor said to me when I went to do the Röntgen in the x-ray department in Maccabi on Bialik, you should go to your doctor immediately. I'm like, well, why? Because I can't read Hebrew and I don't understand it really that well, especially not that technical. And I'm looking at it going, what? It's like, just go to your doctor. I'm like, all right. So I go to my doctor. She's there. She looks at it. She goes, you need to go to the Miyun. I'm like, well, why? Nobody tells you why. So I go to the Miyun. And of course, they don't give you the x-rays from that one you just took. So you have to do another one, and the Miyun's this exciting place. Anyway, to cut a long story short, what they found is what they call a pleural effusion. I don't know if you know what that is, but a pleural effusion essentially is where your lung is being pushed up because there's liquid in the cavity of the actual lung, bless you. And what causes it is a couple of things. They don't really know, or they're not going to tell you right away, but what causes it typically is some type of really bad infection or other types of things. And for me, in my case, because I was apparently so healthy and swimming, they checked me into the Miyun, and it took them about 10 days to figure out exactly what is going on. I figured by day 3, what they did is they do an extraction, which I've had done now, I guess 9 or 10 times. They take the liquid out, and then they test it, biopsies. And what they found is, wow, you actually have cancer cells in your liquid. But we don't know where it's from or what it is yet, so we have to figure it out, because we can't treat you until we know what it is. So what they found eventually, and by day 3, and when they take it out, it's like, you can read about it if you want to. Thank you, Mel, for putting that out there. It's there. Basically, when they test it, and they don't tell you until they're absolutely sure. So by day 4, 5, 6, I was kind of convinced like something's really wrong. And by day 10, they tell you. But day 4, I was sitting with the doctor. We're going over CTs and MRIs and everything they're testing, because they're really looking. And to break the ice, I'm sitting with the head of the Pnimit Machala, and I'm like, so did you guys find anything? He's like, well, there's stuff all over. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, we don't know. And I'm like, so what you're telling me is I'm fucked. Literally. Those are the words. And he looked at me and he kind of was like, yeah. And we all laughed a bit. But we really have to figure out why. What does this really mean? What is this? So basically, November 27th, 2014, which is exactly 2 years and 4 months ago yesterday, they told me I have what they call NSCLC, stage 4, which is non-small cell lung cancer, stage 4, which means it's gone to stage 1, 2, 3, 4. Metastasized. What they saw in the CT is all the tumors, which is basically all in my lungs, my cavities, my bones, around the heart, lymph, adrenal glands, kidneys, just all over. And they're like, well, we can't do radiation and we can't operate, and this is terminal. And you're just sitting there in front of the doctor going, what? Can you say that again? Or don't say it again. And so you enter this world of shock, of course. Probably telling you is shocking. You hear, wow, what does that really mean, cancer? I'm sure all of you sitting here know what that word is, and probably have somebody in your family, friend, maybe even yourself, statistically, or as I say, statistically, it's very possible. And it's not uncommon, especially today, that somebody sitting here, all of us are dealing with it. All of us are dealing with cancer, some of us more personally than others. So what happened is they diagnosed me with cancer, and they said, okay, you've got stage 4 lung cancer, and this is what we need to do. This is now your life. And for 2 years and a third, this is what I've been dealing with. And amidst all of this, somehow finding ways to go to try out for America's Got Talent last month, just for the hell of it, or writing my book, or doing all sorts of things like going for walks every day, or visiting with friends, or trying to figure out what is it next that I want to do. Because people say, well, you might live forever. Okay. Then again, you might not. We talk about statisticals and statistics. The first thing the doctors make you do is sign something. Do you want to know everything, or do you not want to know? I'm 47. Well, I was 44 at the time, 45. I want to know everything. Tell me. I'm not sitting at home losing my mind. I'm sitting here with a family and kids, and I was traveling all the time. What do I do? So they say, well, this is what you've got. This is how we deal with it. We start chemo. We have to test you for mutations. We have to do this. We have to do that. Maybe there's experiments, like just throwing all of this stuff at you. In my case, it's been a very different ride. One of the first things they won't tell you is how much time you have. Some doctors do. My doctor didn't. I stupidly went home and read about it that night. I was like, NSCLC, stage 4, life expectancy. Believe me, Google's very quick. It's like, hey, boom. I was like, holy shit, really? That's what I've got growing in me? Oh, okay. It's not pretty. If you ever get involved in cancer, they talk about 5-year life expectancies. Depending on the cancers, depending on everything, they can fluctuate between 80% survival rates down to 5. Mine's on the worst side. So what do you do with that? What do you do with that when you read that 50% after 6 months are gone? You gotta live. You gotta start chemo, gotta start your pills, gotta start something. So for me, to cut a long story short, and I won't go so much into that, but you feel free to ask anything you want about it. But really with that stage set, it's like, now what are you doing? Why are you doing this? What are you writing about? How do you find joy in getting up every day? And how do I figure out what I want to do with my life? And if I was again 20 or 30 or again studying in school, what would I go do? And how do I figure it out in today's day and age? Because things have moved and changed so much. But here we are. Since I've had the diagnosis, I've been on 2 different types of biological treatments. I'm on the 2nd round now, which is about 9-10 months into it. I've lost my sight in my right eye partially from tumors. I've had 8-9 sessions of Hakanot, which totals about 30-40 minutes of actual gamma radiation to my brain. Because they give you shots for the bones, maybe your grandparents take it, it's called Exgiva, to strengthen your bones. Eventually that can cause problems, and it did, so got necrosis of the jaw. All sorts of stupid, weird things happen, because that's what it is. So here I am today. I laugh more than most of the people in my house. I laugh more than most people around me, because I laugh about it, I have to. Yes, I'm sad, and it hurts, and there's all sorts of crappy things that come along with it, but it's no better or worse than many other people because I put it in perspective. I mean, I was sitting with a therapist, and yes, I do go to therapy and done all sorts of things. And she's telling me, well, what you just said to me is you're losing your sight again. Yesterday was a new experience. Yesterday I had an eye injection for the first time. I was like, ugh, when they told me about it. And I said to the doctor, I was like, I'd rather have them do an echo and an extraction. And she's like, no, you wouldn't. I was like, really? Okay. But they did it, and it's not so bad, the after effects. I was like, okay, I learned something new. You learn something new every day. It's beautiful. But you have to laugh about it.
You're almost a doctor.
Almost. I'm sometimes better than my doctors. But I'm not a doctor, and I certainly read a lot about it, but you have to be in control of your own situation, whether it's dealing with cancer or choosing a career or focusing on a project or whatever it is. So one exciting thing I'm looking at, America's Got Talent. I went to that. I went to New York. I finally felt like traveling again. I saw 28 friends in 5 days in New York City. Went and tried out. I didn't get through. That's okay. But
what did you sing?
I mean, Waiting in Vain from Bob Marley. And
Can you sing a few bars or?
Maybe later. But the good news about it was I was supposed to do it with the original guitarist from Bob Marley and the Wailers, because one of my college friends knows them and knows who Junior Marvin is. And a long story short, he was supposed to join me, but he couldn't, because he had to go play with the Wailers in Colorado, because one of them was sick. They like one of my reggae songs, so it looks like they may be recording it this week or next week, and maybe releasing it. So, all sorts of weird stuff happens if you just get out there and go do stuff. And that's what I do, as much as I can, every day, with the, let's say, restrictions that are placed on me. Not all by my choosing, of course. So here I am, talking to you about me, Stephen Max Stern, where I was born, what I'm doing, why I'm doing it a little bit, and where does it go from there? Well, the same place yours is going. Mel had said, talk to students about what is the passion? Where do you find passion when you're going through your days and you're thinking about what do I want to do next? I'm going to be an engineer, an industrial engineer. I'm willing to bet 90% of you have nothing to do with that in your lives. But you're going to go do completely different things probably. Or maybe do that, but you're going to end up somewhere completely different that you didn't even expect. Because this is just a stepping stone. But what are you getting out of the stepping stone, and how do you take as much as you can out of it? Whether it's this stepping stone or another stepping stone, like dealing with a machala or having a baby or being a parent, because that's ahead of you. I've already done that. I'm still doing it. It's even harder when they're 17 and it's not physical anymore. Here, poo in your pants. Instead, now it's like this psychological thing, like, ooh, I'm having a breakdown. Well, shit, okay, me too. Didn't get over it. You're 17, I'm 47, same shit. Didn't change. So, with that said, I've done public speaking, so I used to. It's still not. It's like a diamond in the rough. Mel gave me the permission and the ability. Thank you for pulling out this diamond again and saying, hey, maybe I found something new to go do. Just talk to people and answer questions and say, hey, what do you do? Why are you doing it? Or why aren't you doing it? Or why do you do it if you don't want to? One of the things I wrote about, which Mel pointed out to me, which he kind of liked, which kind of stuck in my mind, was my approach, as I tell my kids, of what not to do. Because I don't know, sometimes you know what you do kind of want to do, but you certainly know what you don't want to do, right? I hope so. You don't want to be a pilot? Okay. So don't do stuff that helps you go be a pilot. You want to be a dancer? Maybe. Hopefully you work out and you do cardio, because that's going to help you be a dancer. But if you don't want to be a dancer, then take it off your list. But still do cardio, because it's really good for you. Things like that. So you engage in a conversation with people, not about what they want to do, but what they don't want to do. Because that's more exciting. You can always tell people what you don't want to do, and then suddenly you go, well, if I don't want to do that, then I'm not going to do it, and I'll go this way. So that's kind of a high-level approach to maybe thinking of things to do in one's life. And I certainly do it every day, more so sensitively to the fact that I'm trying to survive every day. That's my job. My job is to do tofish faiskas and paperwork and afnayot and Yishuim and Maccabi and Kupat Cholim and just the nightmare that comes with that. It's my job. It's also my job to sit still when they say sit still with the pillow, and now we're going to stick a needle in you. Okay. Sit still. That's my job. So what's going to be your job? Right now you're students. It's one of your jobs. So open up to in a discussion and question and answer, because I feel like I've probably talked about 15, 20 minutes. With that said, to really an open, candid conversation about anything you may want to know about me or this whole situation I'm in, or just questions you may have about thoughts I may be able to answer questions. So let me start with that. Don't be shy.
If you are working on questions, yes, sir.
I didn't really understand why you talk with people. What you wanna say to them? To inspire or to
For
just
sure.
tell your story?
Mainly inspiration. I kind of found that as I went through therapy for the last 2 years, intense therapies, all sorts. I've done Hamasa, the journey, theta healing, traditional social work, psychotherapies, couples therapies, all sorts of therapies. I found that talking to people helps, and I found that actually I'm doing okay for the most part, and the people around me are in a lot of pain, more so than me. And that's really surprising. So really, even though I've got cancer and I'm dealing with all these things, and I've got this nightmare, all these people around me seem to be in kind of the similar situation of pain and nightmare and trouble and just this confusion. It doesn't seem to go away. I'm not exempt. Nobody's exempt from this. And I suddenly realized that. And I'm like, hey, I can help people as much as they help me in the exact same interaction. So it started to be like this thing. Hey, maybe it's nice. I don't have a lot of hours in the day where I'm able to really interact so much because I get overstimulated sight-wise, hearing-wise. Physically, I'm on a very regimented schedule. I get up at 6 in the morning, take 4 pills. I have to take a probiotic to calm the stomach down. I have to take an antibiotic every day for like ever because of this. And then I have to take pills again at 6 p.m. twice a day, whether I'm sick or not, or want to eat or not. So interacting with people helps me through this, and them as well, surprisingly. And so it's like I'm getting my therapy and giving my therapy.
Yes. Okay. Now I have a question, but okay, students have questions. Yes.
Okay.
Can you speak loudly?
Do you feel the situation made you more open-minded spiritually?
I think that's a good question. I think I've always been a spiritual type of person. If I talk to my friends, especially from high school, college, this kind of ruchnik, I guess is the right word in Hebrew, tree hugging, whatever you want to call it. Yes, I've seen the Grateful Dead about 130 something times, and have done my fair share of fun things in America, growing up in an American college environment. And yes, I think I've always been somewhat spiritual, and yes, for sure, when somebody looks you in the face and says, you're going to die sooner, everybody else around you probably. One thing you kind of sink your teeth into is some type of spiritual awakening, if you will, whether you like it or not. I mean, you kind of don't have a choice, I don't think. It's either you go nuts or you don't. I think that's kind of what happens when you're put in a situation like this where it's like, it's white and black. It's very clear. I mean, yes, people do live many years with this type of condition. Less so with what I've got, as it's been, but it is what it is. It's not going away so quickly. They haven't found a cure. They told me they haven't. The pills I'm on, my 9 months, the doctor looked me in the face the other day and he's like, yeah, but they only work about 12 months. Well, you do the math. Now what? You know, will I be like I was last year, literally lying in bed going, fuck, I'm dying. So, absolutely, it speeds it up tremendously, but certainly doesn't have to be that way. Certainly doesn't mean that you need this to hit you on the head to have that type of, I won't say awakening, that type of exposure, or just that experience, let's say. It's not necessary, but it certainly helps. And usually it is these types of crossroad, life-changing experience which does slap us, unfortunately, but it doesn't have to be. But yes.
And like, you find yourself busy thinking what happens next, or just focus on life?
Both. I don't think there's a day that goes by where I don't cry, where I don't laugh a lot, where I don't think about, oh shit, now what? Where I don't think, you know, I'm losing my sight, now what I do? I'm 47 years old, I'm losing my sight, and it's a very real situation that whatever they did isn't going to help, it's going to get worse, and could very well be that, you know, retinal detachment, what it is. So you've got to prepare yourself, whether you like it or not, that, hey, I'm very blessed, believe me, because I've come this far. But I'm also cursed because I've come this far and I still have to deal with all this stuff, and it's not going to end. Supposedly. Maybe it will. But I hope that answers.
I have a question.
No, but get in line. You're after me now.
Could be like when I go get my cannabis, I can give out a little
No,
ticket.
they've never, these students have never asked so many questions.
It's okay, I love questions.
It's not okay, because I also want to ask a
Oh.
question.
Can you say that after you revealed the cancer,
After I-
you revealed the situation, did the decision making has changed? Your decision making?
After I discovered,
Yeah.
absolutely. You have to understand that when I was first told, I thought, and realistically so, that you have about 6 months. Maybe. Maybe. Again, 50% who are told, when you're sitting in front of the doctor, essentially 50% of you are told you've got NSCLC stage 4, are dead in 6 months. And I've got friends, unfortunately, and family members, and a friend of mine yesterday told me, oh, by the way, you're so lucky, because one of my friends just told me one of his friends was diagnosed and 3 months later died. It's not the first time, so you kind of like get in that thing. So to your question, please repeat it so I can just focus back onto it.
I asked if the decision making, like, did you do something, did you manage
Yes.
your life different?
Absolutely. Immediately you go off and you get your wills updated and your estate plans, and you make sure all the files are updated. And they should be anyway, by the way. I write about this because you never know. I'm not the only one. I mean, one thing I wanted to say earlier, when to put things in perspective, my therapist is like, hey, you know, that's awful. You're losing your sight. I'm like, yeah, but what about that poor nurse who was just burned to death yesterday? Some of you may have heard of that last week.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. At least I get to get up in the morning and eat something tasty still. Unfortunately, that nurse was also the mom of one of the people in my wife's speech therapy group, and so this whole big thing. But I'm lucky in that sense. You know, you never know what's going to happen. So yes, but I changed the way I behave. I changed so many things. My diet so many times. The ways I communicate. I wanted to change so many things in my house, but there's a balance, right? I've got two teenagers and a hyperactive wife, and we're living life, and I need my shanti, but you can't have it all the time, right? People run in and out, and so you have to find this balance, but you do absolutely have to change immediately because you want to survive. And then you have 15,000 people saying, drink this, eat that, taste this, smoke that, you know, stick this up your butt. Seriously, somebody said, put this in your butt. I'm like, no, thank you. Maybe when I'm really desperate and I, you know, drink that, I'll do it my way, thank you. I've been here now 6 months and now a year and 2 years. I think I finally learned something. I'm going to do it my way, but yes, absolutely. And we should do it every day anyway. We should always be learning to reassess that situation and the way we do these things, always.
Let's say before that, there was no it wasn't so dynamic, like to choose this.
It was. I was certainly I've always been very, I'd say, Germanic about wanting to have things just so. So I'd be very serious about going to my swimming every day for an hour and making sure that things, or if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it seriously. And so I've always been that way, but I guess I'm even more extreme in that sense. But I've also opened up. I'm very Zorem, if you will, because they're like, hey, I live in a permanent episode of Glee. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like, just like everything in my house is like, good morning! You know, it's like, so it's like, you just get used to it, and I have to adjust. And so, you know, I've got earplugs and face masks and all sorts of stuff I just go around with, because you never know.
Yes.
What you say to yourself when you get things, thoughts about your situation, about your situation, like when you say to yourself, "Oh, I'm sick," and what you say to yourself to change the think of this.
It's a really good
Like
question.
when
Yeah.
you say to yourself, "Oh, I am miserable," I'm tough, or I'm miserable. What you say to yourself to change this?
How do you snap out of it?
Yes.
That's a really good question. I think it's a combination of a couple of things that help. One is you have to process it. You can't stop it. You have to let it go. My experience is let it go. Play it. Tell yourself that story, that miserable story of your kids standing over the grave. Or like when you watched your mom or your brothers and you stood at the grave. You have to let it on. You have to let it go. Put it on the side. We all have tons of plates all over the place because you have to focus on what's at hand. And being miserable and sad is a focus. And what you said, now let me focus on it. And now I'm done focusing on it. And it still exists. It didn't go away. But now it's time for this to be over here along with the other million. It's a plate on the side. And it's sitting there just waiting for me to go back to it, maybe to eat some more. Or not, and it's just rotting, and I've pushed it so far in the distance. But it's there. And then you say, okay, now what? I have to do my Tofel Schweizer, so let me go focus on that. Or you know what? I'm fortunate that I'm not at work, so I feel good enough. I'm not nauseous, or physically I feel okay, so I'm going to get up and I'm going to leave the house. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go change my environment and change my thinking, because now I've processed that. Now, what's the next thing I really want to do? Forget about the drugs I need to take and the fact that I'm going to have an MRI next week, or maybe this is going to start failing again. Yes. But what's next? I want to finish a chapter in my book. I want to go pick up some magic because that's important to me to have my shtick together. And focus on those things. And oh, by the way, my daughter's got her singing tonight, so even tonight I'm going to go to that. And just really, what's the next thing? What's really the next thing? And I don't discount at all the emotions and the sadness of whatever it is, whether it's me dealing with a cancer situation or one of you dealing with the stress of whatever it is, whether it's even a final or a paper, or the stress of somebody sick, or the stress of I'm running late, or whatever. We're all stressed. We all have it. We all have to get rid of it. And so in that light, that's what I try to do, is I try to change. By the way, I also write about it, but I learned my own meditation. I go from Z to A very quickly. And I do the alphabet backwards because it helps me. So I'll go from Z, Y, X, W, V, U, T, S, R, Q, P, O, N, M, L, K, J, I, H, T, F, T, C, B, A. And I'll just do it over and over and over, and go up and down and together in my brain at the same time if I can, until I lose track, because then I've totally forgotten about what else was bothering me. And I talk about that when I write about it, where in the chapter I talk about it is when they're actually taking a needle about this long and, you know, don't move. Okay, I won't. So yeah, that's what you do.
Continue, like.
Yeah, you got to. It's like when my studio collapsed and I was depressed and I couldn't get out of bed. Okay, so I didn't get out of bed and I was depressed, But then eventually you're a human being. You got to pick out yourself up and kind of, like I told my kids, brush it off and move forward. You want to, you know, don't want to kill yourself. Like people do, but don't. Why? I mean, it's your right, but don't do it. There's other things to go do.
Okay, my turn?
I'm after you.
That's what you say. We'll see. Here, this is very tense here. Yes, you're after me, okay. So, Stephen, part of my job here is looking at these young people who don't get it. We have here about 3,000 students, about half of them smoke. I cannot get them to stop smoking. We have a little corner on my floor which says this is a nice place to speak English, which you might assume is kind of important in your lives and careers, to learn a language. I mean, a few people speak it in the world, sometimes more people than speak Hebrew. Wow. And when I say to the students, you know, this is a good place to practice English, they say, like, azov otcha, you know. When I tell students to stop smoking, that their life expectancy is going to go down by 10 years, and you didn't even smoke much.
Most,
Tobacco.
No. It's 50% of the cancers out there are lung, of which 30-40% are unrelated to smoking.
Yeah, but why put yourself at risk?
It's true.
Why, when somebody comes along, okay, who wants to help, who wants to lend a hand, who wants to get these young people to understand that life is so fucking precious, and that you can live with life even in Stephen's challenging condition. What am I missing? I feel sometimes I go home and I say, I have 3,000 students here, and they don't get it. You know what they get? If they get 64 in physics and they need to get 68, they'll tear the building down. Who gives you marks for your survival story? God? Where do you get marks? What mark do you give yourself? Do you guys get what I'm asking? Or are you just going to go like this and then... Yes, Steve.
That's a loaded statement. It's good though. It's true to an extent. Yeah, it is true. What are you missing? Nothing. It's the wonderful, magical adventures of being born, hitting teenage years, coming out of the teenage years. Most of you, I'm guessing, out of the army now. Maybe. Yeah. Past adolescence, becoming young adults into being adulthood and gaining wisdom and knowledge, and it takes time. So you can put all the facts in front of the humankind and the human race. Everything we've ever learned as humans, and we know it all, and it's all the advice, and it's great advice, but it doesn't mean that we often listen to it and take it. And it's sometimes we have to, unfortunately, experience it on our own to really get it. And we can, and we do, live vicariously through each other, and hopefully my story gives you some chills or some type of feeling that goes, wow, yes, I can go do something different, or do what I'm doing, or motivate myself, or go think about what I want to do, or challenge myself. Vicariously, but it doesn't mean you may be going to have that passion every day, and you have to go find that passion. You have to work at it. There's no gift. You have to work to actually make miracles happen. And that's why I say find what you really want to do, or focus on what you don't want to do, so you have that passion to go do these things that really make you happy in the days. And get up in the morning. I get up in the morning, I'm really happy. Most of the time. Some days I feel like absolute hell, and it takes me 2, 3, 4 hours to really get conscious and get going. But I do. So to Mel's point, and yes, smoking is bad for you, but sometimes some people smoke and they don't get bad things, but they have to learn for themselves. We're all sensitive. Somebody had asked me, and to your point, I learn every day. If I eat this, does it make me feel good? Does it not make me feel good? I used to take handfuls of different pills at the very beginning of my experience, and for the first year was not on chemo. For the first year, they have the option to say, hey, it's kind of sitting, so we're not going to give you anything because, we can do that. So, it's an experience thing too. And people are going to have to learn on their own. And some things, to that point of that year, I learned this helps and this doesn't. And I took omega-3 and kurkum and a vitamin and this and that. And I was taking pills and pills twice a day and swimming and enough. I learned eventually it's too much for me. So I changed. And that's what they have to do themselves. And if they're going to smoke, then enjoy it at least and go enjoy your cigarette, because I understand it. I smoked a cigarette. I'm guilty. It's not that guilty. They smoke peace pipes at big joint galactic type functions. That's probably the appropriate place for it, and leave it at that. But if you're going to enjoy a cigarette, yes, you take a risk, just like you take any other risk, and it might bite you in the ass. And then when it does, or if it does, then you have to be like, well, I kind of made my own bed. So I take accountability for my actions, and that's, I think, where the answer is. And I think they, for the most part, do that, regardless of whether we may see the actions as wise or in the right direction we want them to be all the time, but it's little steps, self-improvement, one step at a time. But certainly accountability to know, hey, if I put this in my body, there is a chance it can hurt me. And, at some point they'll choose not to smoke and move on. Some people choose to continue. That's what that is.
So thanks, first of all, for coming here and telling your story. I'm not summing you up or something, but from me. I think, Mel, I have an answer for you. Procrastination. Dachyanut. Like, we always take for granted how we live our lives at the moment, but when we have an exam, we have to get 68, and it's on Thursday, so everything will crash until Thursday, but then that's it. So once you have, I think you're very lucky in that point, because you may have a deadline, you may not have a deadline, but
I don't know.
most of us don't have a deadline for that.
Well, we do. We just don't know it.
We don't know it yet, yeah. So, for example, I'm a very conscious being, and I really want to be in control. This is one of the things I cannot be in control, right? When's my time? So, we're very lucky in that sort of way. But procrastination is the answer of why aren't we doing the things we want to do, because we always have oh, I'll do it next week, next year. Oh, I need to finish school, because my mind is not set up on the startup I want to do, and when I finish my final project, then I can start my startup.
So the person who invents a procrastination buster should get the Nobel Prize or something.
Maybe it's not procrastination buster, maybe it's a sequencing enhancer.
Yeah.
Because it's in sequence, it's in the plan. We just need to enhance it and speed it up a little bit. But that's why you make the plan.
So my question to you is...
Now you have a question?
Yeah. My question to you is, how can someone change a state of mind like that? That it just reminds me the Steve Jobs speech at Harvard, where it was, when he spoke when he understood he's got cancer. So every day he wakes up, it's like he's naked and he has nothing to lose, because maybe tomorrow he won't be here. I wish to live like that, but I cannot deal with the consequences of living like that at the moment. What is your insight about that?
I mean, yeah, I don't think I live like that either necessarily. You're talking about living life on the edge, experiencing and relishing each and every moment.
Just doing what you want to do.
And doing what you want to do. Yes, we're constrained by times for sure, putting that aside. We all have jobs or responsibilities, and we're accountable unless we're truly single and have absolutely no responsibilities, and even then we might have a dog or a cat, so in that case, then you do have a responsibility. But just think about that question for a moment.
No, it's fine. So you're just telling me that even though your life has changed from one edge to the from one way to the other, you still, I mean, maybe it's something that comes later, but at the moment you still live your life with all the responsibilities that you have as a father, as a husband, and the responsibilities for your own body, and you don't just go, okay, I want to jump off the bridge or something, or I want to be a
Yes.
pilot, or
Yes.
something like really, I want to
Yes.
start my startup company. I have nothing to lose, right?
Correct.
Something like that.
The answer, yes. I did a class in Shiba at Tel Shomel called Finding Meaning and Purpose in Life. And I forgot who the American writer is. I think it's an American that wrote about it. And they did a whole series of this stuff in hospitals with people who have conditions that are harsh. But I think the answer to your question is yes. Regardless of the situation, one must try to find meaning and purpose in life. That is what makes us human. That is what makes us tick. If we do not find meaning and purpose according to what we've learned in our filters and our morals and our attitudes and our desires and likes and dislikes, then we start festering and rotting. And so absolutely, whether you have cancer or not, or whether you have that passion 24/7 or not, you have to find a meaning and purpose. And whether it's the meaning of purpose of the moment or the meaning of purpose 6 years from now, I don't think it matters. I think it's the same whether you have cancer or not, or you're just coming out of school with a degree, or you have your test next week. If you have a startup, sequencing, look at your project plan of your own life and say, do I really have the time that I decided to be in school and get a degree to go and do a startup? No, I chose the degree first, let me get that. But it doesn't mean I can't set the stage for my startup and put the business plan together and start talking to the right people and setting up my LinkedIn properly, because there's 1,000 things that can be done for that passion and hobby which may one day be your business. And so I encourage you, and maybe that's the right point, and you ask the right question, is it doesn't matter if you're sick or not. You're all going to be sick at some point, whether it's the flu or not. When you have the flu and you're lying on the couch and you feel like crap, you still have to take care of something in the house, whether you're a parent or not. I enjoy the fact that I can still be a dad, and my daughter comes to me and says, Dad, what do you think about this? If she didn't, I'd start to lose meaning and purpose and be a waste. And that's like the worst thing in my situation that can possibly happen, is that my life becomes worthless. And so my days are spent finding that meaning and purpose and worth in my life for myself. And to answer Mel's question, who judges me? Me. I know if I'm happy with what I did. You did that test and you got a 67, so you failed it. Big deal. Did you do your best? Did you honestly do your best? Did you study as best you could have? Did you do what you could? And if yes, great, so go take it again. And if you didn't, well, shame on you. You know, you can lie to yourself, but you know when you're lying to yourself. Nobody else around you does. So I can put on a big show. I can stand up. I can look big and strong. But inside, unfortunately, parts of me are rotting. But I still look for meaning and purpose in everything I do. And maybe because of the cancer, I look at it a little bit more and say, let me taste that a little bit deeper. But I still did that before, and I think eventually would have hopefully gotten to the same place. But it came a little quicker. But yes, meaning and purpose, all of us have to.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Well, Stephen, I've known you over the years, and you are, without a doubt, one of the most determined people that I've ever met. Determined in everything we've ever interacted. You know, your studio, the way you look at life, and the way you actually attack the world right now. Your book might not have been written without the past 2 years, and you might never have traveled to America to try and appear in a TV show. And I always think of Shakespeare, what Shakespeare wrote about great people, and you are undoubtedly one of these great people. He wrote that there are those who are born great, those who achieve greatness, and those who have greatness thrust upon them. Evantem? And I think that you are a perfect example of this third category, that for whatever cosmic reason, greatness has in this case been thrust upon you. I'm going to thank you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of the class. You're a remarkable guy.
Thank you. Thank you all for the chance and the opportunity to come and speak and get out there again, slowly but surely.